Hello everyone and welcome to our next lesson. Just a reminder that I originally developed this course for the Bangtan Academy Discord community, so if you'd like to find out more, please follow them on Twitter at BANGTAN Academy _ so you can get access to other materials and make friends to study with. You can also find me on Twitter at writer_court or on thebtseffect.com. Hello everyone, welcome to Learn Korean with BTS Chapter 20. Let's get started on page 34. Of course, scan the code at the top and do that exercise and go back with your language pen after this lecture and make sure you listen to the native pronunciations. So in this chapter, we have a bunch of words dealing with tickets and admission and fees and things like that. So let's look at the top three on this page. First, we have 입장권, 입장권. This means like an admission ticket. Then we have 자유이용권, 자유이용권, which means a free pass. And then we have 영수증, 영수증, which is a receipt. Then down on the next two lines, we have 무료, 무료, which means free, 유료, which means paid, 유료, so like pay a fee for entry. Then we have 입장료. Now that rio changes to a nian sound, so 입장료, which means admission fee. Then we have 매표소, 매표소, which is a ticket office. And then we have 신분증, 신분증. These are like identification documents or identification cards. 휴관일, 휴관일, days of closure for a business or some other institution. Then we have 야간 개장, 야간 개장, night opening for some sort of attraction or event. And then we have 관광 안에서, 관광 안에서, which is a tourist information office. So let's move on to page 36 and 37. This is our first key expression. So this is 은 적이 있다 없다. So let's look at the conversation example, the two lines at the top first. The first person says, 이 사진 좀 봐, which means look at this photo. 여기가 안압지야. This place, in the photo, this place is 안압지, which is a pond. So they're just talking about a specific place in Korea. That's just the name of a place. The second person responds, 나도 알아. I think the language pen says, I know this place, which in context, that's what it means. It's literally just kind of saying, I also know this information, meaning I recognize or I know this place. 여기 야경을 드라마에서 본 적이 있어, which means I've seen this night scenery. So 야경, night scenery, night view. 드라마에서, in a drama. 본 적이 있어. I have the experience of having seen this night scenery in a drama. So that doesn't flow very well in English, but that's more of a direct translation. It's basically I've seen this before in a drama, this night scenery. Moving on to conjugation and usage, this is for action verbs. So this 은 적이 있다 없다, the 있다 version expresses the subject experienced something in the past, and the 없다 version expresses that the subject just doesn't have that experience. So this always refers to an experience, so it must be in the past. This un or nian in the conjugation, as we'll see, is what we attach to the verbs. And then talk is actually a dependent sort of noun meaning experience, but you can't use that on its own. You can't just say talk and it mean experience. It has to be used in a sort of construction like this. So this 저기 있다 means to have a certain experience and 저기 없다 to not have a certain experience. So this 은 적이 있다 can also be used for unintended experiences, and compared to 어 봤다, you can't use 어 봤다 for unintended experiences. So for example, 여행 중에 감기에 걸린 적이 있어요, which means I have the experience of having caught a cold while traveling. You cannot say 걸려봤어요. It wouldn't make sense for this type of experience. The second example, 공항에서 아미를 만난 적이 있어요, which means I have the experience of having met an army at the airport. You would not say 만나봤어요 here. You would say 만난 적이 있어요. So to try and clear this up, hopefully a little bit more, you might notice that there are some very similar constructions. So here's a simple example with having tried kimchi. So the experience of eating kimchi, the experience of having tried kimchi, we could say 김치를 먹어봤어요. We could also say 김치를 먹은 적이 있어요. And then we could combine those two and say 김치를 먹어본 적이 있어요. They all mean very similar things. And honestly, right now, I'd say don't worry too much about it because honestly, you might just end up favoring one of these types of sentences and notice that you say it very often, even if it's not necessarily the most correct way to say something. That's what usually happens to me. I get stuck on one form and just use that form. But just keep in mind that there are some nuances here. There are some slight differences, but for the most part, there's not a huge difference. But if you look at the English translations here, this first one, 김치를 먹어봤어요. I've tried eating kimchi. Just a general statement. The next one, 김치를 먹은 적이 있어요. I have the experience of eating kimchi sometime in the past. It's not said when in the past, it's just sometime in the past. And then the third one, 김치를 먹어본 적이 있어요. I have the experience of trying kimchi sometime in the past. So that first example with 먹어봤어요 is more colloquial and less formal. The second example can be for unintended experiences. So this 먹은 적이 있다, not necessarily with, kimchi, but this 저기 있다 form can be used for unintended experiences. But this, 봤어요 cannot be used for those unintended experiences. So that's one important difference. But other than that, there aren't really that many differences. So both number two and number three must be a general in the past statement. If you give a specific time in the past, use this 아오 봤다 instead, because you shouldn't use this 저기 있다. That's more of a general statement with no time attached to it. So like I said, overall, these are all very similar. This talk form focuses more on experience and 보다 form focuses more on trying something. But overall, there isn't a huge difference. Just be aware there's a little bit of nuance and a little bit of very specific differences, like I've shown you on this slide. But for the most part, right now, I say don't get too deep into that. Don't worry too much about that until later on. Now let's take a look at some conjugations. First, we have 늦다, which means to be late. In English, that's something we would probably think of as an adjective or descriptive verb in Korean, but in Korean, it can function as both. So here it's functioning as an action verb. So to conjugate, we would take off 다 and add 은 because it ends in a consonant. So we get 늦은, and then we just add 저기 있다 or 저기 없다. So we get 늦은 적이 있다 or 늦은 적이 없다. The example sentence, dan은 약속에 늦은 적이 없어요, which means Dan has never been late for an appointment. 약속 is like a promise or an appointment. So Dan has never been late for an appointment in the past. The next example is 만나다, take off 다. This time we're going to just add 니은 because it ends in a vowel. So we end up with 만난 적이 있다. The example sentence, 전에 이 사람 만난 적이 있어? Which means, have you met this person before? Do you have the experience of having met this person before? Basically, did you meet this person before sometime in the past? Next, we have 울다 with the real irregular. So we're going to take off 다 and we are going to take off the real as well. So we end up with just 우. So because that ends in a vowel, we're going to add the 니은 and then 저기 있다 or 저기 없다. So we end up with 운 저기 있다. The example sentence, 너무 행복해서 운 적이 있어요, which means I have cried from being happy before, or I've been so happy that I have cried before. Next, we have 듣다 for the digit irregular verb. Take off 다. The digit changes to 리을. So because that now ends in a consonant, we're going to add 은 and then 저기 있다 or 저기 없다. So we end up with 들은 적이 없다. The example sentence, 그 이야기는 들은 적이 없어요, which means I've never heard that story before. And then we have 춥다, which is to pick up. So here, this is a 비읍 irregular. So we take off 다. 비읍 changes to 우. So we end up with 주우. So we're just going to add 니은 for 주은. So 주운 적이 있다. The example sentence, 길에서 지갑을 주운 적이 있어요, which means I've had the experience of picking up a wallet in the street before, or just more generally, in the past, I have picked up a wallet in the street. Moving on to page 38 and 39 with the second key expression, this is Anika. So let's look at the conversation, the two lines at the top. The first person says, 거기는 어두우니까 여기에 서봐. which means it's dark over there, so come over here and stand. So I think the language pen is saying something like, it's dark over there, so come over here and pose for pictures. That's the context because they're taking pictures, but there's nothing in the sentence that says that super directly. So 거기는 어두우니까 because it's dark over there. 여기에 서봐. Try standing over here for pictures is the context. The second person responds, 여기, so here, 예쁘게 잘 찍어줘. So please take it well, like make sure it comes out well and pretty. I think the translation they give you is be sure to make me look good or something like that. But basically the point is 예쁘게, so pretty, 잘, to do something well, and then 찍다 with 저, so to do it for someone else, to take a picture for someone else, to take a picture well for someone else so that it comes out prettily. So the conjugation in use for this, it's for verbs and it's used to show the grounds or reason of a subjective judgment. So it can easily be understood as because, but it's a little more nuanced than that because there are quite a few ways to say because in Korean. So this one can be used with biseo form, so requests and commands and other verb forms, but aso also, which also kind of means because, cannot be used this way. So that's one of the differences with Anika. Anika can be used for biseo and other forms, requests, commands, etc. And it can also be used with past tense conjugations, whereas aso also cannot be used for those other forms like requests and commands. And you also cannot use past tense with asa also format. It just has to be present tense conjugation. And I think it's important to focus on this is, giving grounds or reason for a subjective judgment. So it's not something that's necessarily factual. So for example, this 거기는 어두우니까. So this person, in their subjective opinion, it's too dark over there. So come over here. And that's their justification is their subjective opinion. So that's why they're using this Anika form instead of something like asa also, which is sometimes for more, factual or just general statements. But again, they're pretty similar and can sometimes be used interchangeably. I wouldn't worry about it too much in detail. Just remember there are a few differences and that there are some restrictions on asa also, like not using past tense and not using it with requests or commands. And then also this asa also is used when the speaker reveals some sort of feelings. So you wouldn't say "으니까" if your ending part of the sentence is like 미안해요, 고마워요, 재밌었어요, that sort of thing. So that's why these examples are here. That first sentence, 약속에 자꾸 늦어서 미안해요. Because I'm frequently late to appointments or promised meetings, I'm sorry. So that I'm sorry is the speaker's feelings. So that's why we're using 어서 and like 늦어서 instead of this 으니까 form. The second example, 많이 도와줘서 고마워요. Thank you for helping me. So that is someone expressing thanks, and that's why we're using 줘서 instead of 으니까. Same thing with number 3. 같이 여행해서 재미있었어요. Because we traveled together, it was fun. So the speaker's feelings about the situation is that something was fun, and so we're using 해서 instead of 으니까. And also you can use this 으니까 form with nouns. You're either using 이니까 or 니까, depending if it ends in a consonant or a vowel. But yeah, there are a few differences between 으니까 and 아서 어서. Just keep those restrictions in mind, and beyond that, don't worry about it too much for now, because they are quite similar in meaning, especially for us in English when we just think of that as being because. Now let's look at the conjugations. First we have 늦다, so just take off 다 and add 으니까 because it ends in a consonant, so we get 늦으니까. The example sentence, 더 많이 늦으니까 기다리지 마세요. So you can see we're using 마세요 form here, which is why we can't use 아서 also. It has to be 으니까 instead. So they're saying, because I will be really late, don't wait for me. The next example, 막히다, take off 다. This ends in a vowel, so we're just going to add 니까. So we end up with 막히니까. The example sentence, 길이 막히니까 조금 늦을 거예요. I'm going to be a bit late because the street is blocked. More naturally in English because there's a lot of traffic or there's a traffic jam. Basically, this is 길이 막히니까 because the street is blocked is a literal translation. Because there's a traffic jam, I'm going to be late. The next example, 멀다, take off 다. This is an irregular one, so Rio gets dropped, and we just add 니까. So we end up with 멀니까. The example sentence, 너무 머니까 택시를 탈까? Shall we take a taxi? Because it's too far from here. Then we have 걷다, which is also an irregular verb. So we're going to take off 다. Digit changes to 리을 and add 으니까. So we get 걸으니까. Below that, we have 어둡다. So this is irregular as well. We're going to take off 다, change 비읍 to 우. So we end up with 어두우. And then just add 니까 because it ends in a vowel. So we end up with 어두우니까. Then the final two are noun examples. So 음악이다 ends in a consonant, so we add 이니까. So we end up with 음악이니까. Then with 노래이다, it ends in a vowel, so we just add 니까. So we end up with 노래니까. Now let's look at page 40. This is the full conversation for chapter 20. The first person says, 이 사진 좀 봐. 여기가 안압지야. So look at this photo. This place is 안압지, which is a pond. The second person responds, 나도 알아. I also know this place. 여기 야경을 드라마에서 본 적이 있어. I've seen this night scenery in a drama. And then the first person says, 우리 오늘 밤에 가볼까? Shall we try going tonight to this place called 안압지? And the other person responds, 그래, sure. 그런데 오늘 많이 걸어서 배고파. But I'm hungry because I walked a lot today. And then the other person says, 안압지는 10시에 문을 닫으니까 저녁 먹고 가도 돼. So this is saying because 안압지 closes at 10 p.m. So this 문을 닫으니까 because the doors close, because it closes at 10 p.m. 저녁 먹고 가도 돼. We can eat dinner and then go. So the second part of the conversation, the person is just exclaiming, wow, about the night scenery. So she's saying, 와, 야경이 진짜 멋있네. The translation they give you is something like, wow, the night scenery is really epic or something like that. Which I guess that works. There's not really a good translation for this word like 멋있네 in Korean. Just it's really interesting or really cool to look at. So the other person says, 사진 찍어줄까? Should I take a photo for you? 거기는 어두우니까 because it's dark over there. 여기에 서봐. Try standing here. And then the other person responds, 여기, here, 예쁘게 잘 찍어줘. Please take it well. Please take it so that it comes out pretty. That sort of meaning. So I'll read it one more time all the way through. 이 사진 좀 봐. 여기가 안압지야. 나도 알아. 여기 야경을 드라마에서 본 적이 있어. 우리 오늘 밤에 가볼까? 그래. 그런데 오늘 많이 걸어서 배고파. 안압지는 10시에 문을 닫으니까 저녁 먹고 가도 돼. 와, 야경이 진짜 멋지네. 사진 찍어줄까? 거기는 어두우니까 여기에 서봐. 여기 예쁘게 잘 찍어줘. So let's look at page 41 real quick with the second conversation. The first person says, 언니, 교천 마을에 가본 적이 있어요? Which means, 언니, have you ever been to this place called 교천 village? And the other person responds, 근처에 있는 첨성대랑 월정교도 간 적 있어. So this means, yes, I've also visited these places that are nearby or in the area. So 근처에 있는 in the area. So 첨성대랑, this is an observatory. 첨성대 observatory. 월정교 bridge. And then the other person says, 저는 사진으로만 봤어요, which means I've only seen it through photos. I've only seen it in photos. 사진으로만, only through photos. 저도 가보고 싶어요. I want to try going too. And then the other person says, 그럼 나랑 같이 갈까? Then should we go together? 주말은 복잡하니까 평일에 가자. Because it's busy on the weekends, let's go during the weekday. So I'll read it one more time all the way through. 언니, 교천 마을에 가본 적이 있어요? 응, 근처에 있는 첨성대랑 월정교도 간 적 있어. 저는 사진으로만 봤어요. 저도 가보고 싶어요. 그럼 나랑 같이 갈까? 주말은 복잡하니까 평일에 가자. I also just noticed that I wrote in the first sentence 가본 적이 있어요. And in the book it only says 가본 적 있어요. So that E is left off sometimes. So just for your reference, you can put E there and you can also leave it off and especially in spoken colloquial conversation. It's just the, subject marking particle. There are times where you will also see "un" there as well, so like "본 적은 있어." That's more for contrast, so just a heads up, you can see that there, or you can see it with no topic or subject marking particle at all. But you will never see it with "을" because it just doesn't fit in this construct, but you can see "e" or "in" there or no particle whatsoever. So yeah, that's it for this one, and I will see you in the next one.